Hey, are you interested in what's going on in the Edmonton real estate market right now? Well, if so, then you're in the right place, because in this video, I'm going to review the current market and what's going on as of December 2021. And in this video, we're going to be using the statistics from the Realtors Association of Edmonton that they released for November, which basically includes the latest stats for November, which makes up the December market update. If you get value out of this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe and hit the little bell icon to get notified whenever I release a new video. It really helps a lot. And if you'd like to get a copy of the report that I'm going to go through today, you can actually download that by going to one of the links I'll put in the description. And you can download a copy of this full report. Plus, I'll send you one email each month with a new market report, as well as a link to the latest video. So that's the best way to stay up to date on what's going on in the Edmonton real estate market. So make sure that you go download that report. Okay, so I'm going to break up this report into two segments. We're going to be looking at the city of Edmonton, but first we're going to look at single family homes, and then we're going to look at condos, because those two markets are quite different in Edmonton right now, and it'll be a little bit more valuable for you to actually see how those two markets are comparing to each other, rather than just throwing them all together and giving you a total residential report. I'm going to give you condos and single family homes separately. So I think you'll find that a lot more useful. Okay, so let's jump into the report here. We're going to start with the single family. So this is the Edmonton single family report as of November 2021, as I mentioned. And what we've got here is just a quick snapshot of the market status. So the first thing that we'll look at is the listing absorption rate. And what's so important about this is it actually helps you find out if it's a buyer's market, a seller's market, or if it's a balanced market. And as you can see here, we're just barely right on the line between a buyer's market and a balanced market. The threshold that I use is 30%. So as soon as you've got more than 30% of your active listings being sold each month, then you're starting to fall into a balanced market. We're sitting at 29.79% listing absorption rate right now. So we're pretty much right on the cusp between a buyer's and a balanced market. If we wanted to get into a seller's market, we'd have to be all the way up at 50% or more. So we're a long ways away from being at a 50% seller's market. As of November 2021, we had 2,581 listings, and there were 769 listings that were sold in November 2021. So that's how you get the 29.79% listing absorption rate. So that's something that's really important to take a look at when you're basically analyzing whether it's a buyer's or a seller's market. Now, right over here, we've got a chart that shows essentially how that's been changing on a month-to-month basis. So in November, we're over here. You can see last November, we were sitting at a 21.81% listing absorption rate. So compared to last November, we are selling more of our listings. And as you can see, the ones that are in black or the darker color, those are months where it increased from the last month. So things really started picking up last January when we were only at 22.93% listing absorption rate. So we were still into a buyer's market at that point. And then it kept going up and peaked at 43% in April. And so we were actually in the middle of a balanced market at that point. Some segments actually did feel like more of a seller's market. If you were in the market at that time looking at certain price points in certain neighborhoods, you probably would have noticed that. Things did start to go in the opposite direction in May. It started to cool down. May, June, July, August, September, it kept going down. And we've started to go up again since October. So that's the listing absorption rate for single family homes. Next thing we'll look at is average prices. So the average price in November 2021 was $467,351 for single family homes. Month to month, that's up 0.64% from October 2021. And year over year, which is just looking at the last year, basically November 2020, we're up 3.54%. And over here, we've got, again, like a 13-month history of what that's been looking like. So you can see that it's a similar story to what we looked at with the listing absorption rate, where last year or earlier this year, prices started to go up in terms of the average price. So we were down last December, and then it started going up 1.26%, went up again in February and March, stayed pretty dang close to the same in April, then went up a little bit more in May and then June. and then we started to see the average price drop a little bit from there, and we're actually up a little bit again in this month, which is pretty good for November. It's pretty similar to last year, but we're still up a little bit in terms of the average price. Here's the average price trend on a year-to-year basis in Edmonton over the last 10 years. So you can see that back in 2012, we had a 3.14% gain on the average price, and it went up pretty good for the next few years there. And then 2016 is sort of where it flattened out, and it went up a little bit more in 2017, and then we saw some drops in 2018 and 2019. 2020 was the first time in a couple years that we saw a little bit of an increase for the average sales price, and then in 2021 we had almost a 7% increase in average price. So much stronger year than what we've had recently, especially if we go back 2 or 3 years. So let's look a little bit further into active and sold listings for single family homes in Edmonton. So at the end of November 2021, we had 2,581 active listings, and we had 769 sales. So for our active listings, that's essentially the inventory that we have on the market right now. We're down 14.48% from last month in October, and year to year, we're down 8.93% from November 2020. So that just means that we have our inventory levels are dropping, which is common for this time of year. Basically, as soon as you start getting into the fall, you'll notice the inventory numbers start going down. And the big one there to compare is year to year. So we're about 9% less inventory than we did this time last year. Now, if we look at the solds, with 769 sold listings in November 2021, that's a 3.36% increase from October 2021, which is pretty good. Usually, you often have a drop from October to November, since November's typically slower than November. November's typically slower than October, but we had the opposite effect this year. It was a little bit more sales activity, and year to year we had 24.43% more sales from last November. So that's a pretty big increase from last November, where we had 618 sales for single family homes in Edmonton, and now we're sitting at 769. And this is just looking at the last 13 months again, and it can really show you the seasonality of real estate sales in terms of volume. It started to pick up last year in January, right from December, and February significantly more, and then we had really big March, April, May months. Same thing with June, but that's where the trend started to slow down a little bit. We weren't having quite as many houses selling, and from June it went down from there. But you can see that from July onwards, basically 875, 826, 767, 744, 769. It's pretty crazy that we sold more houses in November than we did in September, October. So November was very strong from that perspective, but you can also see that it stayed like relatively flat since July. So even though things have come down from the high volume that we had in the spring last year, it didn't drop as far as it did last year. We can only see 13 months here, but last November we were at 618, and then December we were at 463. So it'll be really interesting to see what we have once the December stats come out in January, to see if that kind of picks up. But the market, this shows that the market's been quite strong, even though there is a dip from the seasonality. So the next thing we'll look at is average days on market. So we've got 44 days, average days on market in November 2021. So month over month, that's a bit of an increase, which is again normal this time of year. So homes are selling 4.76% slower compared to October 2021, and year over year it's down. So homes are selling 6.38% faster compared to November 2020. So a little bit slower than last month in terms of the average days on market, but pick up from last year. This is again the history, so you can see it's sort of the same thing. Last November it was 47 days, and it went up to 54, peaked at 58 days, average days on market in January, and then it started to drop. 44, 38, 30, 27 is the low we hit for average days on market. And then it started to creep up a little bit from there, but it's taken a while for it to get back up to slightly higher numbers like we had before, but we haven't hit the same numbers that we did back in November last year. This section right here is the market distribution. So this basically shows you how much of the market is in different segments, price segments. So you can see we've got very few single family homes selling under that $200,000 mark. Bigger chunk between 200,000 and 300,000, but the biggest chunk of our market is between 300,000 and 400,000 in terms of our actual houses that are selling. And then there's also a pretty big chunk between 400,000 and 500,000. After that, you see a significant decrease in terms of how many houses are selling in the $500,000 to $600,000 range, and it starts to get even less from there, where if you get into the higher price points, you end up with even just a couple percent of the market is in those higher price points. So that's the market distribution. So from here, I want to get into condos. So that shows you what the single family home market has looked like in Edmonton for November 2021. But now I want to show you how that differs compared to the condo market, which is a significantly different picture. So I might jump back and forth between the two if I think there are some useful things to point out to you. But I do want to remind you, if you're finding this report valuable, you can actually get a copy of this report. If you just click the link in the description below and you opt in, I'll send you a copy of the report, plus a new one each month as I release them. So getting into condo market. So, okay, in the condo market, we'll look at the exact same things as we did in the other section for single family homes, but this time we're going to be looking at condos. For the market status, you can see we've got a much different picture for the absorption rate here. So we've got 14.74% of a listing absorption rate as of November 2021. We had 2,348 listings and 346, which is 14.74% of the listings were sold in November 2021, and that's how you get that absorption rate. So you can see we're clearly in a buyer's market still for condos, and that's been the case for quite a while. As you'll see here on the right, if we look at the last 13 months, there hasn't been a single time in the last 13 months where we've gotten anywhere close to being in a balanced market. The condo market has been hurting. It's been a lot slower, let's say, compared to single family home market for several years now. But there are some good signs that you'll see as we get further into the report. If you look at last November, we were sitting at a 12.14% listing absorption rate. We are up from last November at 14.74%. And things, just like the rest of the market in single family homes, we did start to see an improvement. Basically last February, it started to go up, and it peaked at 18.33% in April, dropped a bit for May, and then kind of went back up to that 18.22% in June. And then it started slowly dropping, but it didn't drop as much as it did last year. So that's a good sign that the condo market is seeing those early stages of recovering in terms of making its way towards being a bit more of a balanced market. If you're a buyer that's looking at buying a condo, this shows that it's still a great time to buy a condo. You're gonna have a lot more negotiating room, at least with some sellers. You can't force anybody to take your offer, but there's a lot more inventory than there are people that are ready to buy. With only just under 15% of the active listings selling each month, there's a lot of inventory there that buyers have to get through before we'll start to see this market switch into more of a balanced market. Now let's look at average price. So the average price for condos in November 2021 was $219,684. So month over month, that's a 1.13% drop from October 2021. And year to year, it's down 2.38% from November 2020. So that's a much different picture than what we saw with single family homes. One thing I do want to point out with average prices is that they're not the best indicator to look at because they're really affected by what happens to be selling. And with condos, you've got everything from like one-bedroom apartments to like high-end apartments or even like luxury townhouses. So if you've got like a bunch of luxury townhouses selling one month and very few of those cheaper condos selling that month, that's going to skew your average price up higher. And vice versa if it's the other way around. So the average price, it's a good thing to look at, but don't look at that and just assume, okay, the average condo is worth this much, so that's what my condo might be worth, or if the average dropped, then it doesn't necessarily mean that the value of your condo dropped. It's definitely very affected by what's actually selling on a month-to-month basis. On a year-to-year basis, it's a little bit more stable, but month-to-month, since you're dealing with lower numbers, it can get skewed more easily. So let's just look at the average price real quick over the last 13 months. You can see last November we were up 1.85%. Then we saw a decent drop in December. And again, with this bit of a boom we had in the spring last year, we saw some good increase in March and a little bit more in April, another good increase in May and June. And then it started to drop with a significant drop in the average for August, a little bit more in September, up a little bit October, down a little November. So condos did rally a little bit in the spring for their average price, but they have come back down, and they've come back down to a greater degree than the single family homes have. So that's something to notice. So, and this is just looking at the average price trend for condos over the last 10 years. And you can see that from last year, in 2021 so far, we're up just over 4% for the average price of condos. So it's the first year in a long time that condos have actually had a decent year, which is great if you're a condo owner, if you've been thinking about selling. 2021 was the first year that you might have actually seen some gains in the value of your house. Basically, since 2016, it was a little flat. Then it started to drop a little in 2017, saw some big hits in 2018, down 5.19%, then down another 5.13% in 2019, and then another almost 3% in 2020. So to see a 4% gain, even though it's still clearly a buyer's market, that's a good sign that the condo market is starting to recover. Let's go forward a little bit more. Now we're gonna look at active and sold listings. So there's, as of the end of November, there's 2,348 active condos for sale, and there was 346 sales. So going back to the active, that inventory level is down 9.06% from October, but it's up 5.58% from November 2020. So it's sort of interesting. It's dropped since October, but it's up from last year. I do think there's a good chance there's a fair amount of inventory that's not on the market for condos for people that have wanted to sell, but they just weren't really happy with the prices. And I believe there's sort of some pent-up demand for people that want to sell their condos that are just waiting for the market to recover a little bit more before they bring their houses, their condos onto the market. Now, if we're looking at solds, we're down 9.42% from October. That you could say is relatively normal for seasonality, but the sales are up 28% from November 2020. So that's a pretty big increase from year over year. Because in November 2020, there was 270 sales, but now we're sitting at 346 sales, and that's significantly higher. So we'll start to see what happens in December. Like last December, we were at 215, so it had dropped even more from November to December. We'll see what it looks like next month when we get the November stats, December stats. We'll get to see how much more it's dropped, but it definitely signs of improving. Now, average days on market, so 61 days on average to sell a condo in November 2021. And month over month, that's down 1.61%. So they're selling a little bit faster compared to October. And but year over year, the average days on market is actually up. So that you see how that kind of contradicts the other stats we were looking at, but that's not a big swing. And there are things that can skew your average days on market as well. But overall, you can see last January, we sort of peaked at 71 average days on market for condos. Then it started to drop in the new year, and the best we had for sellers of condos was in May at 49, and then it started to creep up again from there. So we'll have to see what happens in the new year. And here, this just shows you the market distribution again for condos, and it is completely different than single family homes. In single family homes, hardly any of the market was represented under 200,000, but for condos, it's the bulk of the market is under 200,000, and the next big chunk is between 200,000 and 300,000. So after that, once you get over 500,000, it's a very small part of the market for condos. So the condos are very much generally at a lower price point than single family homes. So that wraps it up for the condo report. If you got value out of this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you'll get a notification whenever I release a new video. It's not all market updates. I also do other things related to real estate and some other interesting things that I like to throw on my YouTube channel as well. And don't forget that you can grab a copy of both of these reports. All you gotta do is click the link in the description below. you'll get to a page where you just put your name and email in, and then I'll email you a copy of both these reports, and again each month after that. So thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.